Devil's Point today, Phil?
Well, if you remember the last time we talked about the inner town wall and the outer forts that defended Plymouth from the north. The original fortifications of Plymouth were all along the foreshore, and this blockhouse made of granite and limestone is one of the better examples of what these blockhouses looked like. These blockhouses were built in the late 1530s under the reign of Henry VIII and under his orders. And they were placed along the coast to defend the rivers coming into Plymouth and the area to the west of us on Stonehouse Creek. And they went straight up to Fisher's Nose up on the Barbican. There are a few examples left. There's one at Firestone Bay known as the Artillery Tower. There's this one at Devil's Point. It was then known as Kreml's Point. And there's the one at Fisher's Nose. And there's also the tower that was built at Henry VIII's time, just by the Corinthian Yacht Club. You can still see that. So that's another good example. These are all the same, similar style, so they're a similar date. Before these were built, there were a number of bulwarks on the Hoe foreshore, just small blocks of stone that protected the town from raids from the French and the Spanish. Totally inadequate at the time. But these, at the time of the Civil War, these went out of use. Not completely out of use, but the threat to Plymouth came from the landward side. So most of these, there was a few guards around here, a few guns. Most of the guns were taken from these foreshore of Plymouth up the hill to the outer forts and placed in those earthworks that were going up in late 1642. These were hauled up by horse and mule and oxen and people. These forts then were left. There was also, at the time of Henry VIII, these forts were also connected by palisades and guns in between them. But they weren't really used in the Civil War because Parliament controlled the Navy. So there was no real sea threat to Plymouth, no blockade of the sea. So Plymouth, the defenders of Plymouth were able to use boats and go out and scour the coast up towards Salcombe, down towards Cornwall. The Royalists here were over at Mount Edgecombe. That was the nearest Royalist outpost to Plymouth. It was too far away from Saltash, where the main Royalist forces would be stationed. It's nearly 20 miles by land. So Plymouth people were able to, soldiers in the early days of the Civil War, in late 1642, were able to raid across towards Mount Edgecombe from Stonehouse, land on the beach between Mount Edgecombe and Millbrook, and take sheep, steal, rob, and then come back before the Royalists at Saltash could come along and reinforce the garrison at Mount Edgecombe. Piers Edgecombe, who owned Mount Edgecombe House at this time, was a Royalist. Now, over to the right opposite, Mount Wise House stood, where the mast now stands. Mount Wise House stood there, built by Sir Thomas Wise. Now, in the Civil War, a gun emplacement was put up there, a small fortification thrown up of earth and stone. And during the war, I believe there was several bombardments of the fort from this side of the river because the house was badly damaged during the Civil War, or it could have been done by parliamentarians themselves. But it was rebuilt supposedly after the Civil War. So we're going to go in a minute towards the other end of the of Plymouth, towards the Fisher's Nose area and the Citadel, and talk about that part of the defences for Plymouth.